Okay.
I'll get rid of the
Good
gun.
morning, Jeff. Nice to see you this morning. I have my guest is Senator Jeff Holley from the 6th Legislative District.
Good morning, Sulani. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see you again.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about some of the activities around policing and police reform and police staffing. I know that you have one bill that you introduced and you're shepherding through this year. It's Senate Bill 5841 to make it possible for some of those small, mid-sized and larger cities to get their staffing up where it needs to be. Tell us a little bit about that bill.
This is something that is a after last year, when we actually had so many people decide to retire that were eligible for retirement that probably wouldn't retire, when we changed the nature of policing in Washington State rather dramatically and inappropriately, I might add, to the point where police are not able to operate with degrees of efficiency or with degrees of confidence that their employers and the public would have their back. As we had mass people leave, they either went from larger cities to smaller agencies, went from several employers out of state, lateraled out of state, or a large. We've got probably 20% of any department at any given time is eligible for retirement, just decided to retire as a result of it. And the mass exodus of police officers from their employers' jurisdictions or from the field of practice has left absolute amazing gaps in staffing. What I looked at as a result of this is that we're not trying to fix the problems with, say, for example, Bill 5051 last year that gave so many officers pause to continue their employment with the large cities or to continue their employment period. We're trying to affect the problem that resulted with everybody leaving, and the fact that even if you have laws of any type, of any sort, if we fix everything, you still don't have the officers available to enforce them, to serve the public as necessary.
So there's a reason they're called law enforcement officers. Somebody has to follow through, right?
Yeah, you have to have the foundation out there. So this addresses the first step in recovery. The first step in recovery is to try and get the jurisdictions out there, provide them the opportunity and ability and the finances to be able to rehire the officers. So this bill does three different things. It captures 1% of the existing sales tax, the current sales tax, and provides that to the several cities to increase staffing. And that assays out to about $250 million a year in revenue being applied to that. Second thing it does is about 40 years ago, the police academies were paid for completely by the state, and it has evolved since then to where about a quarter of the cost of the police academies are paid by the jurisdiction. Well, that's all well and fine if you're a Seattle, Tacoma, or Spokane, for example, but if you're a Wilbur, if you're a Colbert, if you're a Davenport, you can't afford to keep doing that and expending those costs when a couple of years after you have an officer up and running, you have a larger jurisdiction that will come along and take them from you, lateral them from you for twice the money. And it's kind of it's called poaching or steal a cop, tongue in cheek, for years and years now. But that's been pretty much the standard out there. So what this does is this allows the state to pick up the total cost of the academy, which is great for the smaller jurisdictions. There's a couple of different aspects to this that makes perfect sense as to why this is necessary now. One of them is that even the officers they are training, the new officers they're bringing in, we don't have adequate academy slots available to run them through the academy. We've run as many as 17 academies in recent years. This bill mandates that they run 25 academies so that we can go ahead and train the backlog and try and backfill at an accelerated pace the places that are available. So there's three different aspects to this. Now that's on the front end. The back end of the equation here comes from Senate Bill 5652, which is it's a left two. It's police officers and firefighters that during their 15th year of employment through their 25th year, it enhances their benefit accrual for their retirement by 0.5%. So it goes from 2% a benefit accrual to 2.5% for that 10-year period. Those are the years when somebody is dramatically productive. We spend a ton of time in training, experience, the schools we send them to out there. Those are the people that are the heart and soul of the investigations aspect, of the administrative aspect, the community-oriented policing programs, the neighborhood investigative resource officer programs out there. These are the people that are established on this, that when you lose them, what you lose with them, employee attrition for any employer is a dramatic cost. The cost to the public in services and efficiencies and experience is dramatic, especially in police services here. So it attempts to accomplish that on the back end by allowing them a little bit of a spiff, an incentive to stay during those years, because there's a reason that they can stick around for a couple more years to have that advantage and help embellish their retirement a little bit. So we're trying to do on the front end and back end here to increase staffing on that. We're still going to have to work on the changes, for example, in the pursuit policy issues out there, or to change some of the aspects of oversight being completely involved in one agency, Criminal Justice Training Commission, which was multiple agencies actually having a separation and balance of powers before to address this, so that they could look at it objectively. Everything from hiring, establishing certification requirements, providing certification, investigating potential issues out there, and revocation of certification, enforcing termination of officers, all in one agency that has had its board of directors dramatically changed from people that have experience and knowledge in the field to people that might have been impacted by the field and the public out there. I'm not saying the public should input, but hiring and firing of police officers, it's way too easy to go down a political rabbit hole with these issues rather than having objective standards. So those issues are yet to be addressed. Those are the reasons that I think we lost the officers, and there's a couple of House bills out there that will bring us back in that direction if they make it through.
So Jeff, as I was listening to you describe, this is focusing on training to get more trained officers out there. I realize most people would be, including myself, wouldn't be completely familiar with what kind of training is required in this certification. And could you briefly talk a little bit about what training does a law enforcement officer have and need before being put into a position of responding?
Well, training and certification are two completely different topics out there. Certification is something that comes from a department meeting certain criteria of training and operation and policy standards out there. The training will be, it's an absolute amazing year-long apprenticeship for most of the major cities. Smaller departments have their own, run their own show. Nonetheless, everybody has a best practice out there that they want certification. They're going to follow this model. You'll start off the police academy that'll run approximately 4 months and provide you an academic foundation. And then you have, for the following year, you have training modules out there that you work with the field training officer for the first half of that, and they test you, showing proficiency in each one of the areas that you've established a foundation on in the academy. Show that yes, you have the academic foundation, you have the working knowledge. Now can you do the job? And any time during that probationary period, it truly is a probation, because you can be terminated as an at-will employee, without any sort of civil service protection. This is the time to call out the people that probably shouldn't be in the field on this. Be all the way through. Then the last 90 days or so, they put you out on your own and they test you when you're not in a car with a field training officer, and find out if you can truly operate by yourself and do the job proficiently. And there's still a rating criteria all the way through as you progress through this. So it truly is an apprenticeship.
That's a good way to think of it, I think, is as an apprenticeship. What are you hoping will come out of the work this session to reform last session's reform? What's your best hope for that?
I love how you can't ask that with a straight face. So
Sorry.
No, I'm serious. It's just like, and we both know that this is a bite of the apple issue. It really is. That you don't get the whole apple in one bite. You don't get the whole tree, in one bite. And my God, we had rather dramatic whole apple, crash with all the legislation that affected police last year. But to come back and try and recover from that and refine that and adjust that. Well, look, the sponsors of the legislation and the people that were the largest proponents they're not police officers. They've never been police officers. To my knowledge, they've never had any connection with the practice of criminal law or establishment of criminal procedure. And they're the people that are having academic and philosophical discussions saying that we're going to change the nature of policing in Washington State. That is scary when you have people out there that are observers on that. I mean, I stand there Monday morning and I start screaming at the TV too when I watch Sunday's football game replays, right? You know, I'm no Peyton Manning, you know, but my gosh, I know everybody has a kind of perfect view of the world. When you cross that, when you index that, when you have to intersect with what reality is in police work and what with the human limitations, the capacities and abilities are, that is a dramatic shift moment that I don't think they've arrived at. So you had something happen last year when we were having all these road wreck bills. You had State Criminal Justice Training Commission. You had WASPIC, which is Association of Police Chiefs and Sheriffs. You had Washington Council of Police and Sheriffs, which are all the working officers. You had Fraternal Order of Police, which also has a position in Washington State. And you had Compass, which is combined Seattle, I believe it's Tukwila and King County at the time. Officers, their association, all get together and line up on the same side of an issue and say, you don't understand the damage you're about to do. That's unprecedented in the state. That doesn't happen yet. Usually they're at odds about policy issues there, either from an administrative or an operations, you know, or a policy point of view. Everybody lined up and nobody listened to them. I'm the only police officer up till John Lubbock got elected to the Senate this time, you know, for the last 4 years in the Senate. I got to tell you, as much as I tried my darndest to convince these people that what they're doing was you know, very nice from an academic point of view, but absolutely misguided, that they totally dismissed me. They didn't want to hear what I had to say. So this is something that I think we're going to have county councils, we're going to have city councils, we're going to have everybody start to line up when they see the damage that's done, not just from staffing perspective, but from the encumbrance and the lack of efficiency of law enforcement. You know, I mean, Washington ranked second worst in the country in property crimes over the last 5 years here. I don't think anybody's missed these 5 points. You know, I'm looking at the numbers from 2019, 2020 here from the FBI, the Uniform Crime Reporting Table. 2019 is the most recent I could find good stats on. About 1 in 300 people in our state, you know, end up victims of a murder, manslaughter, rape, robbery, or aggravated assault. 1 in 20 people end up victim of property crime, burglary, or theft, right? 5% of our total population in a 12-month period was victim to property crimes in total. These are things that all of a sudden there's going to be this critical mass when people start seeing that things are not right. That'll begin the pushback, the common sense pushback here that's inevitable to come because of people meddling in this in the first place. We're totally misguided.
Oh, and I know if you've read any of my writing, I'm passionate about the mental health care system, and we just don't do a really good job of dealing with that. But when those police reform bills passed, I am aware as a first responder myself of watching well-trained police officers doing a really good job of de-escalation and managing those kinds of situations. And when they were not able to be there to back us up as EMS, that's a real problem. And I think we're starting to see some of the stories come out of the unintended consequences of not letting police exercise their professional training in those settings. That's not a question; it's a statement. But that's my little rant.
And you know, and if you want to make it a question, you know, like we do, you say, "Don't you agree?" You know, I mean,
okay.
but the point is, I do agree. And again, you're playing into the whole category of misguided. The people that put these things together were idealistic, but you know, not attached to what the realities of policing are. Look, we had back in the 80s, we deconstructed the social fabric that we had for so many social agencies out there. When I was working the street all the way into the late 80s, I mean, literally our options was detox, crisis residential for kids, and jail. I mean, you get to the point where, and detox is full, you'd be bringing people up there just to get them in out of the cold. I had times that everything was full because we didn't have mental health available. 8 North, was, if you didn't hit the threat yourself or others, and hit that trigger, so you could do a 72-hour involuntary evaluation, and it's just to save them, from being out in the street and freezing to death or doing stupid things. We take people down. I would literally transport people down to the steam plant behind City Hall, behind the old Washington Water Power turbines down there, because they could lay on top of the grates because there's warm air coming out. I mean, for gosh sakes, those are the tools we had. At least we've come back from that. I mean, that was on the abyss back then, and started to provide social services and outreach again. But we are so lacking in addressing that and separating that from police work at its core. And you talked to Ozzie Nezovich, I mean, great sheriff for Spokane County, and had great insight, whose heart is in the job. Spokane County Jail has oscillated between the second, third largest mental health provider, not for jails, mental health provider as an institution in Washington State for the last 10 years. We are, Sulani, you and I both know exactly what needs to be done here, and it sure isn't the mess they placed us in by these misguided bills last session.
Have you seen the stakeholders that are involved? It seems like it would be so obvious that if you want to reform the profession of policing, you would involve police, just like if you were reforming the practice of physical therapy, you would involve physical therapists. I mean, how often do you see bills have a really robust group of stakeholders around them?
You're looking for logic or common sense versus ideology in the way, in a perfect world, a Garrison Keillor kind of a perspective to the way things should be. And I'm kind of lost at times as to so many times we don't, or to realizing that our knowledge base is 6 inches deep and 3 miles wide because we cover such a wide array of topics. And it gets so frustrating at times when you actually have in a small niche, an area out there that you might have a lot of experience or have something to bring that sometimes people don't want to hear it. The legislators, that have these ideological positions don't want to hear it. I don't know, Simon and Garfunkel talked about this a long time ago in the song The Boxer. And man, here's what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. I mean, this is not a novel concept. Been around for quite a while. So I'm frustrated in this specific lane we're talking about today, that exactly as you present, you're trying to ask a general question. Oh my gosh, that applies here. We're seeing the consequences of it because tampering with law enforcement, criminal justice in the state, inappropriately so, has rather immediate consequences.
Okay, well, I think I'm going to follow up on stakeholders every time I look at a bill and try and see who actually got to be at the table to have some input.
Amen to that.
So, Jeff, thank you for joining me this morning. Have a great rest of your day. I know you're off to a transportation committee meeting, and that sounds charming.
It's always a joy to talk to you, Sulani. Next time.
All right. Bye.